Hello everyone, this is Alex Schmeekin, one of the artist residents at the Iowa Ceramic Center and Glass Studio, and today I'm going to be showing you all how to trim up a large plate. This is the 12-inch plate that I threw in my last video, so I actually threw it about a week and a half ago or so, and then I let it dry for a couple days. I wired it off, let it dry a little bit longer, flipped it, and now here we are. So I'm currently feeling underneath and kind of the bottom of the plate to see how much clay I need to trim off. It is pretty thick, so I do need to trim off a fair amount. I always throw a little bit on the thicker side for the bottom because I don't want to wire it off by accident. And so here I'm centering. You can see that my right hand is braced with my other hand and on my leg, and I'm kind of feeling where there's that gap between my finger and the plate, and then I'm giving it just a little scooch in that direction. I'll make a video at some point with a little bit more detail with how to center pieces, because I know some people have a hard time with that. So next I'm going to be rolling some lugs of clay, and just to stick on there to keep my plate from going anywhere. It's not a super tall profile piece, so I don't need to worry about that quite as much, but it's just good for peace of mind so that it doesn't go anywhere it shouldn't be going. And notice how I'm just smearing down into the bat. You don't necessarily want to push into your piece or smear onto your piece because you might run the risk of denting in the rim, or you can kind of get a bunch of gunk on your plate that you don't want to have. So that's pretty much what I do. So it kind of just works as a nice little doorstop. Alright, so then first I'm going to go in with just a regular loop tool. I like to use a rectangular end because I like using the corner to help kind of make a nice refined foot. Notice how I am holding the tool. I have my left hand in the middle. Sorry, my head is kind of in the way. And then my thumb on my left hand is braced against my right hand. So it's all very connected. My elbows, you can't see this in the video, but my elbows are in and on my legs. You can always put them on the splash pan. And I'm basically just taking off a little bit of clay at a time. I'm kind of deciding where I want my foot ring to be, and I'm kind of cutting underneath that just to get some extra clay off. Of course, you always want to check before you start how much clay you can take off the sides, especially because you don't want it to get too thin right above where that foot is. So you want to be careful. And I like just using a little loop tool because it just helps me take off just a little bit at a time. I don't want to go too crazy or cut too deep all at once. I just want to just do it nice and steady. And so basically I'm just kind of moving along the radius of the piece, letting my wheel go at a pretty fast speed. I tend to trim a little bit on the faster side just because it makes it so that my tool kind of has a little bit more even of an effect. If your wheel is going too slow and you're not moving your tool fast enough, then you're just going to get a lot of swirls and it's going to be crazy. And I'm okay with having some swirls and stuff right now because I am kind of just in the process of taking off the bulk of the clay. And so I'll clean all that up later with a bigger loop tool, and once I kind of get things a little bit more refined. So now I'm going to keep working on the piece for a while. I kind of take my time when I'm trimming big pieces, and you'll notice that partway through I take it off because I think I'm done, but then really I'm not because it's still really thick. So I end up putting it back on the wheel for a second round of trimming, which is something that I kind of do a lot on big pieces because I tend to be a little bit more hesitant because I am worried about trimming through the bottom, but you know, turns out you don't really need to be all the time because it's fine. So yeah, so I end up trimming it twice pretty much. And the thing with that, you just have to be careful to recenter exactly the way you were, otherwise it's gonna kind of mess up the foot ring that you have. So that's just something you have to be careful about. Alright, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit until then. We'll just put it on 3 times speed so you can enjoy. So with the ruler, basically what I'm doing is I'm checking to make sure that the center of my plate isn't higher than the foot ring, because I don't want to have it be wobbling around on a little dome. So that's just a really easy way just to do a quick double check. It can really be anything flat, but it has to be long enough, so that's why I did my ruler. So remember to make sure to center your piece really well when you're putting it back on, because otherwise it'll mess up your foot ring. Alright, we've pretty much finished trimming. Here I'm just smoothing out and taking off just a little bit more. I tend to take off even a little bit more over by the foot ring, because usually when you throw something it's a little bit domed, so I'll make it be a little bit deeper right there. And then so here I'm flipping it, and then I decide that it is good enough. And something that I mentioned in the previous video, or I don't know if I mentioned it, but you might have seen, is that there's a little bit of a belly button in the middle of my plate. It's kind of hard to see here, but basically I'm going to show you how to patch that. So usually I'll go over to like my table or something, but for the sake of filming I stayed on my wheel. Just make sure that you don't press the pedal. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of clay, and before I do that I'm going to wet the area just with a little spray. You don't need very much water. But I'm just adding a little bit of clay in the middle, smearing it out with my finger, and then I'll go in with a metal rib and just gently smooth it out so that the bottom of my plate is just flat, no belly button in the middle. So like I was saying earlier, in the previous video, you don't have to fix those kinds of things when it's really soggy. You can always wait until your piece is a little bit more leather hard. And you want to make sure, of course, that your metal rib is nice and clean, because that way it won't put any like weird scratches in your piece. And you want to use a really, really light pressure when you're doing this, because I don't want to scratch up my piece too much. So I'm just being very gentle and going in a bunch of different directions and kind of smoothing it out. And then after this, you can take a sponge and just kind of smooth out the whole area just to kind of help blend that in even better. But here I'm just kind of nitpicking, looking around. Like I said, going from a bunch of different directions. Just gently patching this up. And I'll pretty much do this for any kind of like dent or anything that I put in a piece. Say you accidentally like whack something with your finger a little bit, or with a needle tool, you can always patch it up. Here I just whacked the room with my fingers, so here we are, smoothing things. And yeah, so now I'm going in with that sponge, and I will patch it all up. Alright everyone, thanks for watching this video, and remember to watch part 1 of throwing if you haven't gotten around to doing that. This video is very similar to my trimming a big bowl video, but it never hurts to see me do it another time and maybe I'll say something different, who knows. So now at this point, in order to avoid S-cracks, I'm going to let this dry super slow under plastic for about a week or two. I'm not really frying anything right now, so it'll be a second. Alright, well thank you.